Here's part 2 of our most recent Legal AI Live on LinkedIn. If you missed part 1, make sure to go subscribe at legalailive.com and check out our YouTube channel or Legal AI Live on any podcast app to catch part 1. Follow the Legal AI Live page on LinkedIn to watch us live. Without further delay, here's part 2.
Could you talk a little bit about, just describe what Notebook looks like, what the experience is for people who haven't tried it?
Yeah, I mean, everybody, Carolyn's AI Teach-In is available for purchase. Go purchase that and check it out. You see 10 minutes there.
You.
I do have a video recording of me using it though, Dennis, because when I taught at CLE at Legal Geek in Chicago just last month, I dedicated a full 10% of my 1 hour presentation time just to a pre-recorded video of me using Notebook LM, because you really need to see it to believe it. And I wasn't sure where the internet connection was going to be there. But just like I did on Carolyn's thing, I'm happy to do a live demo because it just works. Like, it does what you want it to do. And if you only talk to it about the sources that you've provided, it's going to give reliable answers coming from somebody who uses the tool every day. I've never thought to even ask Notebook LM a question that's outside of the sources in which I've provided. And after somebody asked me if I could do that, I did it. Like, it did give an answer. I don't love that because, again, I don't want to get information from training data. I want to get information from the sources that I've provided or that you're going to access if you're like an AI, a legal research tool that's designed for that, right? But it's like any of these other tools that you're using. It's a chat-based interface, but first you connect sources. And if you don't have any sources, they have a discover button that you could click on and you could just ask it a question. It will find links on the internet. So you could say, and I built this. Like, I don't know anything about AI. Are there useful resources online that could teach me how to use AI that are the most modern and up-to-date resources? Could you give me the top 10? And it will find the top 10 links. It will create them, put them in as sources, and then you could start asking questions about it, whether it's type or audio. And they give you citations. So this is why lawyers should love it, because just like Perplexity, Notebook LM will give you citations, and it will if you hover over it or click it, it will bring up in a side-by-side window where you can look at the analysis or the summary, and you can look at the actual source at the same time to verify, that it's correct or where it's coming from. Because you could do semantic search inside of Notebook LM. So semantic search compared to keyword searches, you don't actually need to know what the words are in the document. Like, you could explain the meaning of what you're looking for, and it will find it, and you could pull it up side by side. Oh yeah, like that's what I was looking for. It wasn't the words that I used, but that's in there. So, I mean, I could go on and on about it, but that's the gist of it.
And others you using Notebook LM, and maybe talk about how you're using it?
I use it for that podcast feature. The agency where I practice often issues like 600-page rules, and it's just a really good way to get the lay of the land. You upload it. I mean, I was shocked. These rules are very complicated and very unique to the energy industry. And the analogies it uses are so understandable. I know one of the challenges when you litigate these cases on appeal at the courts will say, this is too complicated. Why did the petitioner use so many acronyms or something? We don't understand what's going on. You just use Google LM to argue your case for you now. But it's just a good way to listen to stuff while you're driving or while you're doing something else to get the information and just get a quick overview of what a case is about or a complicated regulation. So I really love it for that.
I use it I do a lot of trainings, and like I have a lot of materials over the last, 7 years that I've done and iterations of it. And so like I'm looking for consistencies and changes and trends and like just things about how I've grown and taught and changed to help me with future things. So I think from like iterating on your own stuff, right? Like if we can think about, I like to think, because I don't practice as much anymore, like what are the other ways that I can use, like Matthew was saying, like, okay, if you're not going to do it for the legal work, use the other parts. And so for me, the other parts look like, okay, how can I improve how I explain something? And so I probably don't use all the features that Matthew uses, right? But I try to put my sources in, reflect on my sources, and then when I want to go recreate a new one, figure that out, or ask things about in a training. Here was my outline. Here's the reality of what I did, because I'll put a transcript in. What were the gaps? What was confusing? How can I, fill in the blank in these different areas? And so I think helping others have more understanding of what I was trying to teach or what I was trying to do, and using tools like that make it so much faster and much more reliable than anything that, I would do on my own or asking someone else to do that might be boring and like mundane. So.
What about you, Greg?
Well, I've certainly used it, but I don't use it very much. And I think what Kimberly and Carolyn and Matthew are saying kind of illustrates this point about, information sharing. And it makes me think a little bit more about trying to use it a bit more. I'm typically more of a visual learner, so the podcast feature maybe doesn't appeal to me as much as it might to others. But I mean, just from an accessibility standpoint, even, for people who maybe, just learn better that way or need to consume information that way. I mean, it shows the power of the multimodal nature of AI that, you can consume information in all these different formats. So, I mean, it's a terrific tool. And I know a lot of people who are very enthusiastic about it.
And it gets things wrong, right? Like even the audio summaries. Like there was an acronym, Theory of Change, TOC, and the audio host pronounced it as TOSI, as in just the first two letters and then said C. So like at first it totally crosses the uncanny valley, but then there are really signifiers where it's like, okay, yeah, this is still definitely AI, but it will get better.
But the movement that you make from zero to where it is astonishing. And so what I'm doing is, I call it my knowledge forge is the name for it. And it's a digital twin concept. So why I call it the Holy Grail is that if you wanted to either train or focus AI, 2 years or so ago on your own stuff, it was all but impossible. And it could take days to try to train something. Now you just take whatever you have in a Google Doc or a PDF and boom, it's the source material in a notebook, and you can create these notebooks really easily. And so I have, 20 plus years of blog posts. I have all my articles. I have all these things. I did this thing recently where I said, I have 2.5 years of ChatGPT and other AI transcripts. I'm just uploading all of them. This was a lot of work to break it into Google Docs, but I call these my haystacks. And I put them all into a Google Notebook. Then I used Gemini to say, if I'm going to pick the best things out of this undifferentiated mass of information, what would be the needles in the haystacks? It gave me like a list of 7 different things. I took that, turned it, and that was a text document. I uploaded that into the Google Notebook, and I said, take a look at this haystack document and pull the needles out for me. And all of a sudden, instead of me pretending someday I could read through all the stuff and pull out the good stuff, it pulled the stuff out for me based on criteria. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, I can do these little dot text things in whatever notebook I'm in. And I did this thing today where somebody mentioned yesterday this book called Metaphors We Live By. And I said, okay, do a summary of this book, pull out this information about metaphors. And then I said, okay, apply these concepts to this thing I'm doing and generate metaphors and then taglines for what it is that I'm doing and other ideas. And it was astonishing. It's not like saying, oh, let the AI figure it out. I'm telling the AI what the guidelines are. And so I call this concept guidelines.txt for lack of a better name. But that's one of the things I'm experimenting with. But that's why I think that NotebookLM is this holy grail, because you can really identify the sources. And to me, I mean, Matt, I know yesterday we were talking and you gave a great example of, how somebody could use that on a really complex document to find something that is in there, but you don't know exactly where it is. But for me, on the personal level, you start to say, oh, here's all my ideas, like pull out the best ones, because usually we're just sitting here going like, oh, I have these things. I'm going to go back to it. I have all these chat transcripts. I'll go back and I'll dig out the things. I'm like, no, let the AI do it. Right. But give it some guidance and see what happens. So anyway, that's my summer project. As my lawyer friends say, it's unfair for me as a law professor to talk about summer projects and speak of summer as like a different time of work year, but that's where I'm at these days. So I don't know, anybody's thoughts on that approach?
Well, hearing silence while people think, we have some questions in the chat. Thank you, Greg Varner. Can you contrast NotebookLM with GEMS inside of Gemini? And again, I'll do a nod to Carolyn's AI teach-in if somebody gives a talk about that, and then I think almost right before 2 talks right before I talked about notebooks, you could actually see the differences inside of the teach-in materials. But in my experience, Notebook LM is purpose built for being a super powerful research assistant, and you just can't build that kind of a product inside of GEMS. And it really only answers based on the sources you provide. And from what I've heard, it's more reliable in that regard than building out your own GEMS. But GEMS would be better suited to other tasks, right? Not necessarily what Notebook LM is built for. We also got a question from Bruce Miller. Anyone have recommendations for prompt drafting / engineering? Bruce, I'm going to refer you to legalailive.com or Legal AI Live on YouTube, where we talked about that in past episodes. So I could reference that now. We do talk about that in past episodes.
The short answer is let the AI draft the prompts for you.
Yes, totally.
I'll just say what Dennis was saying also was just that I love the idea of building a second brain. That's a concept that I follow a lot for many years, and it's a concept that's out there. One of the people that talk about a lot his name is Tiago Forte, and I've been in his space for many years as well. And he's not the only one; he's just one of the newer people talking about it. But I like that. That's how I think about these tools, right? How can you build a better second brain for yourself, right? I think content overwhelm is real. I think we're in the age of too much content. And that, we can just go down the rabbit hole, and this is your opportunity to actually go deeper, to spend the time, and then to let it help you make connections, but don't rely on it to be the only connections. But I do think it's a great tool because just like with Notebook LM versus using Gemini, I feel like you go to all your CLEs, you take all these notes, you want to synthesize, and you want to put your notes into some place and then kind of come back to them and synthesize and pull from them. Better to use Notebook LM. If you want to kind of see what the world is thinking about and see how you can, better talk to, maybe just call what's happening in the universe of things, Gemini, right? And other pieces, and that's maybe too basic, but just as an example. But I like to use these tools as a way to support building a second brain. And that's definitely a use case that I have, and I ask it to challenge me on some of my thinking, just to better present my arguments, to better present my philosophies, my frameworks. And so I think to me, that's, another good use case, at least what you've been saying, Dennis. So.
There was this study out of MIT a few weeks ago that spawned a lot of coverage in the media about how using LLMs would impact human brain activity, perhaps not in a good way. And I think, Kimberly, what you're talking about, a second brain, is kind of the other side of that. There are ways. It's a question of how you use the technology, and if you have instant access to this massive volume of information and can really curate it down to the most important nuggets at any given time, I mean that has to be only to the good and really help with cognition and how we deal with this stream of information and actually do something productive with it.
Yeah, I agree. That one's interesting to me, where we talk about 2 years into this, how AI is destroying our brains and making us less human. And could we get a little data? Could we do a few experiments first? And if you trace the calculator to, I'm sure that the first time people added numbers using, papyrus and reeds, that people were saying they're less human now, and human brains are being destroyed. But sort of it allows us to do some different things. And so with my haystacks and needles, what I'm saying is that I don't feel, it might be different if I'm doing a legal research thing or something like that, where I need to put more detail in. But I have this undifferentiated massive stuff that I captured that I thought had some value. Instead of me going through looking for the needles, let's have the AI make the first pass. And I can't do all of the stuff I could find anyway. So I'm just going to have to kind of filter it down to what actually becomes usable. And that becomes the next step for me to say, okay, so which of this now potentially gets turned into a project, and how do I phase that? And I'm also using AI to describe the projects, to rank the projects, to do those sorts of things. All first pass, I go in and I make changes, right? I don't agree with that, but I understand where it's coming from, or I know how to tweak it. And I sort of feel that my experience as a lawyer, that's sort of what we did in law practice was to say, okay, here's this idea. We start from here, and what about this? And what about that? And I don't know anything for most of my career, anything I ever did that the first draft went out, right? And hardly anything I ever did wasn't done with other people. I just sort of see AI now is this super convenient, super patient, willing to do anything thought partner for me.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And what that made me think of, Dennis, is it reminds me of something I have in my brain dump Google Drive Google Doc that is like future LinkedIn posts that I just don't get around to ever because I'm too busy. But it's about how critical thinking is actually required to get really great output from these AI tools. And if you're getting bad output, you're probably not thinking critically enough about the way that you're using the tool, and also the questions, the prompts, the interfacing, however you're leveraging it, right? And so to like that, people are worried it's going to like be a brain drain, or like people aren't going to think critically. Well, you're going to know right away because it's going to be really crappy output and like really bad results. Like you're going to have to review everything. But now you don't like, how long would it have taken you to do the first draft? So I really think that thinking critically is absolutely crucial, and that skill is not going anywhere. And lawyers are really good at that skill.
yeah, I just did this thing. It's funny you say that because I've had this for a while, but I just updated massively. I have this critical thinking prompt where it's basically the idea is like take the classic approaches and the best approaches from the best people on critical thinking and put them into a prompt and apply that to what I give you. And I did this other thing, it was like, look for logical and other gaps. So in the last column draft I did, I put the column draft in there and I said, okay, what are the gaps? And it identified these things. Like, this isn't a very good example. It'd be good to have some facts, numbers here, that kind of stuff. And then I said, yeah, but my limit is 1,000 words. So I don't want to like put everything in. So what are the most important things? And then it gave me like a list of 3 things, and it totally improved what I was doing. And it didn't make me feel any dumber. It just sort of felt like it improved, or that I had been talking to like one of my law mentors, like, my mentor, Bill Hobson, who said, have you thought about this in what you're drafting? So I think it's really useful, and it's just available to you all the time.
I think one of the things as we're thinking about this too is to think about the client side and the client experience of it, because I think we are trained to be like we said, we're trained to be critical thinkers, right? This is what we do. I think that may not be, and it's a skill, right? And it's a particular skill that we might have more of than maybe some other people. And so I think the other side of this is then to ask what happens for the people who don't have that skill and how they're interacting with these same tools. And it just brings me back to a conversation I had earlier, like early this week with, I think, very educated, very experienced professionals who weren't thinking about them being the product of the free AI tools, right? Like, you're using it free, you're the product, you're putting information in as a train, and so I think we approach it that way, but I don't know if those that we serve approach it that way. And so I think as a whole, then there's a responsibility on the industry, those that are creating the tools, that are in these spaces that should be leveraging the tools. And I'm in the space too, so I'm putting that on myself, but to think about how we design tools to help elevate these things, right? Because the tool actually could improve your critical thinking. Like, it could be built to, like if a schools are worried about it, well, have an overlay that doesn't give the answer necessarily, but gets you through the thinking, like law schools, like, okay, if we're going to use AI, how do we instead bring something in that trains the critical thinker? Because I think, I think like any other tool or any other thing we use, good information in, good information out, bad in, bad out. And I think we might have the case where there could be a lot of bad in, but we can instead support helping people learn how to put good in, particularly in our industry where we still only serve like less than 30%. I think we have an obligation to help people use these tools in a way that allows for them to be able to leverage it so they have some decent output without necessarily the skill set and training that we have too. So as we're thinking about what's happening and our responsibility, I think in the legal industry, and as we're using the tools, how do we help share these tools to our potential, or maybe never clients, but people who need them, in a way that allows for them to get access to legal services that don't look like always us doing it. So.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that, to me, one of the powerful things about AI is this ability to put output in styles and in language and approaches that other people can understand readily, and to have, have a way of doing that. So at least you're improving that. Because I often say when last time I was a CLE, somebody put up a slide. I was like, oh my God, that is a wall of text. That is a wall of text. Nobody reads walls of text anymore. Like, so we have to figure out like what people respond to. We can't just say like, oh, kids these days, they don't know how to write and read cursive. They're deficient. It's like, well, it's like the QWERTY keyboard. Like it was designed to be hard, make it hard to type. Like why do we need to read cursive? Let's think about that and how people are actually communicating. And I think, Kimberly, you're right. This to me is the opportunity for the court system and the access to justice spaces. How do we make these legal processes, especially ones that I don't think need lawyers, how do we make them so much more usable and allow the systems that we have, which are overloaded, to focus on the things that, maybe are more important?
Notebook LM in a court, right? Like people don't know how to fill out the thing and you could just like, okay, this is what you do and we're not mad at it. Like it just helps people do the thing, right? Like I just like, there are tools out there that can help us do things that I think we as an industry have to let go of and be okay with it doing that. Give the necessary disclaimers, right? Cool, right? But I think there's so much help that if we get creative on the use cases, place it in every courtroom, right? Place it in every agency, place it in every like motor vehicle, where you're going to do something, you're like, I don't get it. Or even for the people that are working so they can answer the same questions like you were saying, Matthew, about like, how can we help? I don't know. Let me not go off on a tangent, but I just see like there's so many good use cases in our day-to-day life that we can improve how people access legal services that don't necessarily need to touch a lawyer. And a lot of these tools right now can do these things. And I think Notebook LM with a closed universe is an example of a tool that can be placed in a lot of places for people.
But lawyers are not getting that. I just heard this lawyer on TikTok. She was talking about how you could use ChatGPT to draft an agreement, but you'd really want a lawyer because the lawyer brings a wealth of experience and can account for different variables that ChatGPT wouldn't. And I posted a comment. I was thinking, ChatGPT is becoming a little bit more granular than it used to be. And if you have Google Notebook LM, you can feed the lawyer's experience into it. She's got the exact wrong idea about what AI can do. It can be a substitute for lawyer's experience if you empower it or give it knowledge or give it the lawyer's experience, and it can use it as a proxy. I think lawyers are starting to get this stuff backwards. And you see that on estate planning documents, all estate planning Facebook groups all the time. You have people saying, oh, a bot can't write a will, a bot can't do this because there's this exception, that exception. That's what it's supposed to do. You tell it what the exceptions are, and then it applies them, and it maybe even discovers new ones itself. So I think lawyers have to get on the right page about this. I think part of it is the guild mentality. And I think part of it is just not understanding what these tools do because they're not using them.
So true.
Right. A lot of lawyers talk about what is like the free version, early days. You're going like, I don't even know what you're talking about at this point. And they also use the example of like the perfect lawyer. And this is the thing that bothers me, because I always say the lawyers are like plumbers and like the people who work on your house. Like whoever comes in, they say, I don't know what the guy who came in before me did. They didn't know anything. And it's like, you never find a lawyer who say, oh, I looked at this other lawyer's work and it was great. And, and even then you would say, how do I find that lawyer who's great? Do I have access to them? Do they have time to do that? Certainly the great ones can't scale because they're doing billable hours. So what are we really doing here? Like we're comparing AI, to the mythical perfect lawyer. And we're all good. We're all great lawyers, but we're probably not the mythical perfect lawyer. And I don't know that they exist. And once we get outside our specialty, we're certainly not the perfect lawyer. So, so I think that becomes a difficult thing. And then we have to be more willing to say, if we're at zero, right? And this is how I look at the Google Notebook. If I'm at zero and the AI moves me to 10%, 20%, 50%, 80%, that's gigantic. If it helps me apply that knowledge that I have, the experience I have in better ways and potentially at a better scale, becomes really interesting. So Matt, how are we doing on time? Do we need to close out with some tips?
Yeah. It looks like we got about 4 or 5 minutes left.
Okay, so let's do some your favorite tips for our audience on AI for this week, and maybe something that people could leave this and try. I can go. Let me just go around the room and start with Carolyn.
I guess if you're using Google Workspace already, start using Gemini within Google Workspace. It's a no-brainer and it's just already integrated. I just let it sit there for a long time and finally started using it and can help you, at least identify your folders or get some information quick. So it's already there. So if you have Workspace, start using Gemini with it. It's built in.
How about you, Greg?
Well, Matthew mentioned Gamma, I think, at the top of the episode, and I'm someone who actually enjoys creating PowerPoint decks, and so I was very resistant to start using an AI tool. But wow, it's really impressive, and it's a situation where it really does get you to like 80-90%, and then you can really elevate what you're doing beyond that. So I would encourage anybody who does a lot of decks to check out some of those AI tools because they're pretty impressive.
Kimberly.
Yeah, I would say I think we have to start reimagining how we work. And that, I think, kind of back to what Carolyn said, it's hard. And so start making those steps. So I think, if you say to yourself that my work is special and no one can duplicate it, then I encourage you to use the Gemini or the Copilot in a closed universe and start saying what you do. Just talk to it and then ask it to create a process for what you just said. And just check it and just let that be your starting point. Because I think a lot of times we have to get outside of ourselves to see that there is a process-driven way to do what we do. And that if you get to that, you can then leverage these tools in so much better ways, because let the process be the process. And then you can bring your human to it in ways that the process just won't ever solve. So that would be my first step, would be, even if you don't think this, but if you think your work is so special that it can never be processed out, then go to Gemini or Copilot, right? Go in there and write what you just have a conversation about one of the most complex things you do, and then ask it to create a process on it and see what comes up.
Yep. Matthew.
So if you're more out and about and on the go, Notebook LM does have a mobile app for iOS and Android. And so you could go ahead and download that, and it lets you easily switch between accounts. Like I have like my Curvis First consulting company's account and my law firm's account, right? So like limited functionality, but great to take it on the go, in particular if you want to listen to it in the car, like the audio overview summary. So check that out. If you're a Perplexity user, especially Pro, go to Comet, spelled regularly, COMET.perplexity.ai, and you will see that they're launching a browser. And you got to get on the wait list now, because they're only allowing the people. Now Perplexity has a $200 a month subscription they call Max, just like all these AI companies have $200 a month. So if you're willing to pay for that, you'll get in right away. But get on the wait list now, because I'm really interested to see what comes of that. Also, there are some tools out there that do let you actually quote unquote AI clone yourself. I've seen Twinbox.ai. Jonathan Stark said he was using it for his podcast. They're focused on the podcaster space. And then there's another tool called Delphi, Delphi.ai, and Delphi is like the Oracle at Delphi. And the ethics of this, maybe we get into on a future episode. And do you tell people that it's not actually you, it's an AI clone of you? But we'll leave that teaser there.
Yeah, I've been talking to people, and not just family, but some family stuff, but where people will say they have some question, and people will be debating what the answer would be. And you just want to say, could we just go on Perplexity and just instead of people guess who this actor was or who was in this movie, instead of spending 5 minutes on this, can we just go on Perplexity and just move on? So I think that Perplexity is really interesting for me in those types of things as well, to say oh, here's a question. And maybe we can resolve it really quickly and not have people say, well, I seem to remember that, the best way to start a fire when I was a Boy Scout was X, I don't know. It's fire doesn't change that much, but probably we could go find something that's better than your 50-year-old memory, right? Matthew, want to take it away?
Yeah. So again, everybody, thanks for coming. Thanks for being here live. Look, there were 2 people who asked questions in the chat live, and we answered them. So if you want to participate, please participate in the chat. Let us answer Dennis's questions in the chat. And if you're really interested in being on Zoom with us, we're not an exclusive group. You just direct message me, let us know. and we'll make sure you get an invite, to the future thing, because we'd love to have more diverse opinions on what's happening with legal AI. So with that, thanks everybody for coming. Follow everybody on LinkedIn, because we have to vamp because there's a 30-second delay in terms of the recording. So follow everybody on LinkedIn, click the bell to get all of our notifications about all of our posts on LinkedIn. And with that, it looks like the video has caught up. So I will go ahead and end the stream here. So thanks everybody for joining us live.